Welcome back to the Mark Moses Show, only right here on Sports Radio 95.9 The Fan. And right now here on the Club 52 hotline, who covers the Ohio State Buckeyes in the Big Ten for BuckeyeGrove.com. Good man, Kevin Noon. And yeah, we're going to talk some Big Ten, college football, Ohio State. We're going to go around the horn with college football. Kevin, how you doing today, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate coming on. And I want to start with this. You know, down here in the South, we're getting nonstop, hey, SEC Network starts next month. It'll debut, show a lot of big games. But, I mean, being in Big Ten country, and I know the Big Ten Network's about 5 or 6 years old, what has the impact been with the Big Ten Network? Has it been good, bad? I mean, what are your thoughts on the Big Ten Network?
Well, I remember when it rolled out, and a lot of people said, oh, 30-year contract, this will be lucky to get through 2 years. And then they finally got locked into a lot of the big providers. I mean, they had DirecTV, but it took a while to get on Comcast and Time Warner and some of those others. And then the checks start rolling in. And then everybody on the college side is getting pretty happy because they're seeing the money coming in. Fans are happy because you can turn it on and see replays of old games and conference-specific type of programming. I think it's a very good thing that they started with Big Ten Network, and it's kind of spread to some of the others. I think that Big Ten was kind of fortunate to be the first one to really come out and have success with it. I mean, we've seen, like, Mountain West had the Mountain, and that never really was able to do much. Longhorn Network is still only seen by about 7 people inside the state of Texas. So, I mean, a lot of it is about being able to get cleared, being picked up by the cable providers, and obviously having ESPN in the back pocket of the SEC Network. They're still not on DirecTV as of the time that we're talking. These things happen quickly. You never know. But you know, I think it'll be a good thing, and you know, even as a Big Ten loyalist here, I may turn it on once or twice.
We're here with Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove. Well, I know you got the expansion with Rutgers and Maryland, so now you have new TV providers, TV viewers that can watch the Big Ten Network. And what about the idea of that, like, in a couple years, new contract will be up? Can these schools in the Big Ten really make $30-40 million apiece just by having this network?
Well, I think it's a combination of having the network and then being able to sign it, you know, sign their secondary deals with ABC, ESPN, and you know, maybe shop to Fox and see what's going to happen with all that. I mean, there's a lot of money to be made there, and BTN has been fortunate because they already have several of the deals in place with the New York, New Jersey, Maryland, DC providers. I mean, sure, there are going to still be some providers that they don't have at this point, but they'll come on board before it's all said and done. And you know, so there is a lot of money there, and let's not kid ourselves. I mean, athletics definitely have a very strong link to the financial side of things, and these conference networks are money makers.
When is it going to hit Big Ten fans that Rutgers and Maryland are in the conference? Is it going to take a couple years? I mean, I don't think I'm ready for this.
I think it's going to take the first. I think as a Big Ten fan, when your program gets beat by either Maryland or Rutgers in a major revenue sport, that's when you're going to actually recognize that those two schools are in there. I mean, yeah, it adds 2 new road trips potentially to your travels. I mean, I'm going to get to go and see my first game at the University of Maryland. I've never been to a game there, but as for the fans, I mean, they all talk about it, but you know, maybe when they sit there and start seeing the highlights on BTN or they start seeing the schedule, I mean, there's definitely a chance that during Big Ten media days when Randy Edsall's up there speaking, or you know, or the Rutgers head coach, that there'll be, you know, there will be more of a Kyle Flood. There'll be more of a chance that they'll say, okay, these guys are within the conference. But right now it's still just kind of in theory, even though they are full members of the league.
We're here with Kevin Noon, BuckeyeGrove.com. Follow him on Twitter at Kevin_Noon. Well, you have the new teams in the Big Ten, so now you have new divisions. Do you like this? I thought it was kind of fun to have legends and leaders because it's so insane to say. But now you got East-West. Do you like the balance of the two divisions, and do you just like it overall?
Well, if you look at the Big Ten East and the Big Ten West, at least, you know, when on speaking football, which is the only sport that has the split divisions, everything is loaded to the East at this point. You have Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, and Michigan all in the same conference. And sure, you can say, oh, but we put the 2 new teams in the conference in the East as well, but you still have 4 major powers on that side. I mean, and that's not taking anything away from the West, where you have Nebraska and Wisconsin and Iowa. But if you look at just where the power has come from the conference at this point, through leaders and legends or whatever, now it's all consolidated into the East. So at this point, the East is going to be a little bit of a tougher road than the West.
Well, when you look at your Buckeyes, Urban Meyer's going into year 3. Undefeated year 1, went to a BCS game last year but lost to Clemson. What are the expectations? And I think I know what you're going to say, but what are the expectations for his coaching staff here for year 3?
The expectations are the same as every year: go undefeated. I mean, that's not just an Urban Meyer thing. That's just always been an Ohio State thing. That fans expect this team not to lose a game, and ultimately, if you look at the schedule, it's really going to come down to that game in November in East Lansing against Michigan State. I mean, you hate to sit there and say that it's just going to be a one-game schedule. And, there are a lot of talented teams on the schedule, but it all really comes into that one. And I think Ohio State fans, if they can get out of East Lansing with a win, that they're going to have a shot at going to Indianapolis to the Big Ten championship game and then being part of the college football playoff, the 14 playoff.
We hear a lot about Braxton Miller. He's coming back this season. He's the elder statesman for quarterbacks when you think of the Big Ten. Probably the most explosive player as well. What are your thoughts on Miller? Because he really hasn't won big games when you really think about it. He's not won a title, has not won the Heisman. What are your thoughts on Miller here going into his final season?
Well, he's come back and led them back, pulled victory out of the jaws of defeat several times. He has probably more come from behind victories than any other active quarterback in college football right now. Granted, you're going to get that by having 2 3/4 seasons already under your belt as the starter. And, I think one of the things that I've noticed with Braxton Miller during his career is that there's always kind of been a little bit of a swoon toward the end of the season, whether or not they kind of take it away from him as a passer and have him be more of a runner. But it almost looks like the games are being called a little bit differently, and he's been doing a lot more with his legs than his arms. If you're an Ohio State fan, you need to hope that they feel more comfortable with him with his arm and that he's going to be able to be more of a passer, because I think that's where there's going to be the success. Because if not, teams would just load up against the run, and I think that's where they kind of ran into some issues.
I wanted to ask you about that. You look at Ohio State's offense. What about the weapons around Miller? I mean, he can't just be a one-man show, right?
No, and they lose a couple of powerful weapons. They lose Carlos Hyde, who's now with the Niners. I mean, he was one of the best runners in the country. They lose Corey Billy Brown, who was his leading receiver, who he would always look for whenever there was trouble. But I mean, he's going to have some guys around him. Ezekiel Elliott's going to step up as the main running back, in my opinion, a sophomore out of St. Louis, Missouri. There are going to be some good receivers. He's got one of the best tight ends in the country with Jeff Hireman, who's out of Naples, Florida. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of other weapons around him, but it's going to take those first couple weeks, I think, for him to find a little bit of a comfort level with some of these guys and be able to get that offense in click. But I think when it's all said and done, that this is an offense that's going to be north of 35 points a game.
We're here with Kevin Noon. Buckeye Grove is the website, covers Ohio State and the Big Ten. Follow him on Twitter. It's a good one, Kevin_Noon. This next one, and I ask this as just a college football fan, what's going on with Michigan? I mean, that's the big rival for Ohio State, but it just feels like, and I know it's been different coaches there. It's not just one guy. What's happened to Michigan? I mean, they're not a power anymore, are they?
No, I mean, they show moments they show flashes, but they just have not been able to put it all together. I mean, whether it's the offensive line issues that they had last year, I mean, they've recruited a lot of offensive linemen, and they just haven't all worked out. I mean, they've had to make some changes on the coaching staff. I mean, it just really hasn't been there. I think that they needed to kind of cycle through. Rich Rod brought in some good players, but they were not necessarily built for the Big Ten. I think the issue that they ran into was it took a while to cycle some of these guys through. I expect them to come back, but I don't know if it's going to be this year. I mean, right now, I just had done an interview with a Michigan station, and they asked me who the bigger rival is at this point, Michigan or Michigan State, and it's Michigan State at this point.
No, it's a good point, and you brought up Michigan State earlier in our conversation. Are you sold on them being good for the long haul? I know they've shown flashes over the last 20 years. They're good for a year, and then they kind of go back to the middle of the fold. What are your thoughts on them in 2014?
I think that they're in an upswing right now. They'll have a couple good years. I don't know if I'm buying on them being a perennial power within the conference. I mean, as we see, I mean, success is going to always beget success, but they have these moments where they get pretty good, and then they don't recruit a lot of the 4 and 5 stars. So they try to recruit them, but they don't always necessarily land them. And they have some guys who don't develop, and then they kind of come back down to the pack, and then they'll work their way back, and they'll come back down. I think they're going to be pretty good. I think that they are right there with Ohio State in the top 2 teams of the conference here in 2014. Do I think that they have the staying power to be there in 2016? That I don't know. I mean, they've done a good job of recruiting, but so much of recruiting is a gamble. You just don't know how these players are going to develop, and so much is on the player themselves because they have to want it. You can only coach them up so much. If these kids don't want it, it doesn't matter.
Okay, 2 more for you. I know you're a busy man. You posted on Twitter some funny photos of the new college football championship trophy. What are your thoughts on the look of the new trophy?
I mean, it's an interesting look to it. I mean, the one picture, and I can't take credit for it, that somebody posted was a scene from A Christmas Story, and they put the lampshade on it and kind of playing off of the leg lamp or whatever. But in all seriousness, I think it's a case of where we're going to need to see somebody hoisting it at Jerry World at the end of this upcoming season to see how it looks, because you can put it on a pedestal, you can do whatever, you can Photoshop whatever you want with it. We're not going to know until it's there. And also, to correct something that people have been concerned about, the Crystal Football is not gone. It is just not the championship trophy that is going to be like the main championship trophy. It's now the American Football Coaches Association trophy, but there will still be a Crystal Football involved in the process.
Wait a minute, you win both trophies? I'm confused here now.
You win multiple trophies. You win like about 6 trophies. I mean, everybody's got a trophy. The AP's got a trophy. The bowl, whatever's got a trophy. The Football Writers Association of America's got a trophy.
Oh.
When Ohio State won the national championship back in the early 2000s, they got about 5 trophies out of it.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay. And here's the last one. You're bringing up a playoff. You ready for the playoff, my friend? I think it's going to be complete chaos once we get to November. What are your thoughts?
I think everybody thinks that we're taking a step in the right direction, but I don't know if 4 teams is going to be the answer. I know as a member of the media, it's going to mean that much more traveling if Ohio State is fortunate enough to get there. It could mean a week in Pasadena and then a week in Dallas, which, is not bad compared to 2 cold weeks in Ohio at that time. But I mean, I don't know. You got to be careful what you're asking for with a college football playoff. Everybody tries to say, oh, it's going to be like the NCAA tournament in college basketball. Well, there are 68 teams involved in that. There are 4 teams involved in this. And while you may not have these computer polls in there, now you're putting it into a learned council of football minds or whatever. Don't think for a second there's not going to be controversy. See,
this is the problem. This is where I become the Big Ten guy, because I grew up in Chicago. I don't like the idea that the Rose Bowl is a semifinal game. No, that should be Big Ten versus Pac-12. I think it's nonsense. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
But do you diminish the Rose Bowl by saying that it's not going to be part of the equation? I mean, in years that it is not a semifinal or a championship game, it will still have its role in some way, shape, or form, and will probably still be a Big Ten, Pac-12 type of game. But it's one of those things. Do you diminish it by not having it in the equation to save the history? I don't necessarily have an answer on that one. I mean, I would like to see it remain that type of game. I had a problem the first time they had a non-Big Ten Pac-12 team in there here in this modern era, but in order of progress, I mean, I guess you're going to have to forgo some old things like that.
Great stuff. His name is Kevin Noon. Buckeye Grove is the website. Follow him on Twitter at Kevin_Noon. Kevin, I appreciate the time. I know you're a busy man, and I hope I can get you on again.
Anytime.